Salford, Ikahihifo had 150 metres, 3 offloads. Elliot Keir, a try assist, 5 tackle busts, 141 metres and 4 offloads. Rhys Williams, a try, 5 tackle busts, 151 metres. And Jack Orman-Royd, 40 tackles and 10 of those from marker. For the Warrington side, Nathan Roebuck, a try and 121 metres. Ellis Longstaff, 51 tackles. Matt Davis, not to be outdone, 61 tackles. 23 were marker tackles. And Danny Walker, not to be outdone again, 71 tackles and 24 marker tackles. That's a phenomenal set of tackles by those 3 players for Warrington. They must have worked their socks off.
And when you think that Danny Walker popped up in the semi-final as well a few days later, it's even more impressive. But 71 tackles, that's the second most tackles recorded by one player in one match since the start of Super League.
Wow. That's what a way to start. Maybe he's going to inherit another Danny. He's thrown as Super League's greatest tackle exponent.
Maybe so, yeah. David Hunter was the first fan view. He said, they were impressive early, but the inexperience and lack of game time showed. Well done to Salford for the win, yet still impressed with the performance of the Baby Wire.
And Lee Whitnell says, if there's one good thing to come out of the smouldering wasteland of 2020, it's the opportunities it's given for young players to get their chance in the first team. Tremendous effort from those young lads, a little bit of luck here and a type of grip of the ball there, and they could have easily won. Hopefully we'll see more of them in the future.
I mean, that Smouldering Wasteland reflects my sporting weekend as much as anything else, Lee, so it's definitely a contender for episode title. Paul O'Brien, Pop the Viking, said, great effort from Salford, never gave up, and to only lead once and win the game. And yes, yeah, they were what, 18-6 down at half time, like you said, 18-12 down going into the last 10 minutes when Warrington could have had a try that was ruled out correctly for a knock-on by the video referee. If that hadn't been the case, then it would have probably been out of sight. But as it turned out, tries from Tom Gilmore and Krishnan Inu's penalty right at the end saw them steal it. What did you make of it?
I mean, I must admit I had only one eye on this game while it was going on. I mean, the conditions weren't fantastic to play in. I thought Warrington did well. I thought their experienced players stood up well around their young lads, so the combination worked pretty well. You know, people like Akawala and Deck Patton, and did a good job, I thought, sort of shepherding the young charges around the field. They were very energetic, Warrington. I think Salford. It's difficult to know, isn't it? Because when you're playing, and almost all of that Salford team were first choice players and would play again at the weekend. It's difficult to know two things, I think, when you've got an experienced side coming out like that. One is there a little bit of complacency when they look over the park and see who it is they've got to play against? And the second thing is, a lot of the guys playing for Salford were going to have to play again at the weekend, and they knew it. They've got a big semi-final game coming. I mean, Salford's chances of returning to the playoffs are pretty slim. So, the semi-final and now final, I'm sure I'm not giving any games away by saying Salford made it, was probably high up in their thinking. So, just how flat out they went against Warrington is difficult to tell. Either way, I thought it was a good game of rugby, and I certainly enjoyed the competition, and it was a good finish.
Yeah, I think everyone was really impressed by sort of the young pivots for for Warrington. Danny Walker, who we've become used to seeing, Dec Patton, who we've seen plenty of over the years, but young Riley Dean and Josh Fewlis impressed, didn't they? But there was an obvious lack of experience in kind of the centres and the second rowers was an area that eventually Salford were able to exploit a little bit. I mean, particularly that try towards the sort of back end of the game, the Tom Gilmore try. A little bit more experience, and you think people would have closed up some of those spaces. But both teams, it felt like, were playing the reserves. I mean, the Red Devils had a completely new spine, and like you say, they were almost holding back some of the more experienced players that were in the side. There was 2 or 3 players maybe playing for potential semi-final spots.
Yes.
And outside of those guys, I mean, Coach Ian Watson even said it, like they were kind of trying to tell Christian Inu and Rhys Williams to kind of stand back a bit, don't be all action in this one, kind of sort of thing, which is easier said than done, isn't it, sometimes? But Lee Mossop came back from injury and tried to stake a claim for the semi-final and that sort of thing. Tom Gilmore and Ollie Ashall-Bott came in for debuts for them. So there was a lot of new combinations, albeit players who might have some familiarity with each other. And I think that probably showed for Salford. Because one thing you had with all of these kids playing together is I can only imagine that Fewlis, Wrench, Roebuck, Dean, Longstaff, Robson have played a lot of rugby league together in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Which actually means that some of their connections and stuff might have been...
Would be better.
Yeah. And you would almost think that with the mix and match nature of the Salford side versus the clearly an altogether different side of that the Warrington side would point out, you almost think like, well, in opposed training sessions, this is the side that's going up against the side that was going to start the next weekend anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe it's no surprise that they came out with that energy and enthusiasm, but also with a little bit more familiarity, maybe of training together, and had that great start. We haven't talked about Sitala Kiakuala being on the wing. You mentioned his name, but he was on the wing.
Not a position that you would normally expect to see him in. He's normally barnstorming down the middle of the park.
It was almost like he was the one player in this squad other than Danny Walker you thought might be playing at the weekend. So they thought, right, in case we do need him,
keep him out of the way.
Let's get him match fit by only playing him half a game. And that by that we mean out on the wing, so he only does half as much. He did have that hilariously 10 or 12 yards offside chase for the kick through at the end. That didn't quite come off. I mean, the Man of Steel points, 3 went to young Josh Fewlis, who got the man of the match on television as well. Inu got 2 and Patton got 1. In the Albert Goldport, Fewlis got 3 again. Patton got 2 and Ashall-Bott got 1. I actually was a little bit underwhelmed by Ashall-Bott. I was hoping to see more because I was so excited about him when he played for Widnes in the Super League.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that 2 years later he'd have taken a step on. I'm not sure he has. So... he's young and talented and got loads of development to come yet. So that's it's good to see him getting another crack at this level, so he knows what it's all about still, so he doesn't forget that when he's off back in League One next year with Ottawa potentially. I thought Elliot Keir was really good for Salford. His offload assist for the kick. From the kick take for Salford's first try, his quick thinking, which showed his experience over the Warrington kids for his dummy half dive over for the second Salford try. I thought he should have got some points in Man of Steel or Albert Goldthorpe. I'd have given him a point personally. He's not played a lot for Salford, but he is a ready-made kind of replacement to come in when you need him. He's not going to let you down, which I think is when you've got a small squad like Salford, if your fringe players are never, a leadership type players like Keir, who's not going to kick off and he's not going to let you down, then I think that's great.
I mean, I think Salford's pack, particularly in the second half, really laid a better platform for them to play behind as well. Actually, I thought Greg Burke had a good game as well as Ikahivo and McCarthy in the pack, and even Paulie put a couple of runs in.
Yeah, you're right. The sort of experience of the pack did get over the top, didn't it, in the end? Highlight moments, I think Patton's slightly delayed pass for Fewlis' try. I thought that was a beauty of a pass.
Yeah, it was a lovely pass.
Riley Dean, his try, I mean, his facial hair definitely needs some work, but his footwork, that doesn't need much. He had bum fluff, didn't he, bless him?
Yeah, his facial hair won't go amiss in the Super League. There's one or two other players that have got that sort of stuff going on for them.
Yeah. Wispy stuff on the face, but wonderful stuff with the feet. So well done to him, definitely. Right, shall we move on to the third game?
Yeah, no, let's do game two.
Okay.
I don't think were hugely enamoured by the game, were we, Mark? But anyway, let's cover it for the record.
Last Tuesday didn't feel like Derby Day all day, and I had to sort of remind myself frequently that we were going to be watching this. But in the end, it was a thumping win for St Helens, 42 points to nil. It was 18-0 at half time to the Saints, and then they hammered home their advantage and seniority in the second half. Ben Thaler was the referee. In terms of the team stats, 9 more errors made and more penalties given up, but otherwise the numbers were hugely dominant for St Helens. 415 more metres at 2.1 metres per carry better average gain, 9 more breaks and 7.1% better team tackle success rate. It's pretty much a hammering, and that's what we saw. Individually, Regan Grace 2 tries, 10 tackle busts, 187 metres, 3 clean breaks. Jack Welsby on the other wing, 2 tries, 8 tackle busts, 155 metres and 2 clean breaks. James Bentley, 1 try, 53 tackles, 12 marker tackles and 2 clean breaks. And James Roby, in a week that was all about the youth, Mr. Old stager James Roby comes in with 133 metres and was phenomenal, I thought, in this game. For Wigan, a couple of the youngsters impressed on the stat sheet. James McDonnell in his Wigan debut, 121 metres, and Harry Rushton in his Wigan debut and possibly his last Wigan appearance, 41 tackles for the second rower. Do you want to start us on the fan views?
Let's do that. Lee Whitnall, the strongest team that Saints could possibly field.
No, you've missed one.
Oh, did I? Oh, yes, sorry. Tim Gradio, Wigan Slump 2020. That's a good one. I'll carry on with Lee Whitnall since I started him. The strongest team that Saints could possibly field versus the Wigan under-19s, and a few fringe players has got blowout written all over it. But it was great to see Adrian Lamb use the 2020. So many youngsters in such a historic derby. Those players will learn and improve because of this experience, and ultimately there can only be good news for Canberra Raiders.
We'll skip over yours, seeing as you're here, and we'll do Tom Andrews. He said, maybe a controversial view, but resting all your stars against your nearest rivals, although according to Tom it's not a derby. I mean...
Tom, look on Google, mate. Look on Google. It is the derby.
Yeah. No other derby is separated by the Earl of Derby's estate, Tom.
Exactly.
He said, resting all your stars against your nearest rivals wouldn't sit well with me if I was a Wigan fan. Nice to see the youngsters get a game, but surely better ones to pick.
And Paul O'Brien, the Viking, not a normal derby, but the Wigan youngsters should be proud, which is correct.
Yeah, I mean, we know Warrington played a good number of youngsters, and they handed out 2 Super League debuts there, and also a club debut to another young player. Salford had 1 young player, Louis Roberts, who unfortunately got injured on debut. Wigan handed out 6 debuts in this match. All of them sort of to academy products, although Kai Pearce-Paul really is a London Broncos academy product that we signed this year. So and Saints, of course, not to be missed out on. Lewis Dodd got a debut off the bench for St Helens, long awaited, I think, for Lewis Dodd. So yeah, that's kind of covering it from the young player point of view. At the time, I was completely comfortable with the decision. You know, we could have played our full first team in a full whack derby and still lost the game and had a hangover going into the semi-final. As it turned out to be, everyone will sort of second guess because the semi-final wasn't won by Wigan, but that's another conversation to have. I think they made the sensible choice. It was unlucky that this was Saints' only game in a 2-week span as well. Yeah. Because Saints were already out of the cup, so they didn't have a semi-final to worry about. And they didn't play the round before either, because that was their...
No, we didn't. We had a bye week.
Toronto game scheduled sort of thing. So it was. Even then, it would have been difficult. Wigan turning around from playing on Thursday to playing on Tuesday.